G'day lads, this is part 2 of the NBA in-season tournament model, and in this video I'll be taking the group table developed in part 1 and then based off that simulating the resulting knockout stage of the tournament so we can calculate each team's probability of winning. Alright lads, since we have a league table for every division, we can go ahead and highlight in gold or yellow first place in West A, B and C along with East A, B and C. Scroll up to the top, you can do a couple simulations to check if it's working. Then move over to the right, we're in cell AC3 to cell AE3. You're going to merge and center this, do a little header and name it West Wildcard. And in here, this table, we're going to figure out which West team from A, B and C get the wildcard spot to go into the playoffs of the in-play tournament. So in AC4 to AE4, write in team points rank. And then from AC5 to AC7, wrap this in an outside border. And then in these three rows, we're just going to list a team, the number of points they've scored in the group stage, and their rank out of these three teams. So the first team in cell AC5 will be the second placer in West A, and that's the Utah Jazz in this simulation in cell K6. So equals K6, and in this sim, it's the Phoenix Suns. So the next team will be second place in West B. So scroll down to West B, and it should be in K19. And then once we've done that, we need the West C second placer in K32. Press enter, and now we've got our three teams up for consideration to get that wildcard spot. Now we need to be able to rank these three teams in terms of points, and to be able to do that we need to go equals points, so equals L6 times 100,000 plus, then it's going to be M6 for the West A second placer, which is the point differential, plus N6 times 1 divided by 100,000. And what this formula does is it allows us to rank teams based off of first their record, then their point differential, then their points scored. So 50,032 means a record of 50%, point differential of 32, and you'll see in that decimal 0.0048, that's the point scored. So you can see for West B, it'll be the same formula, equals L19 multiplied by 100,000 plus point differential in M19 plus N19 times 1 divided by 100,000. And so once we've done it for the West C second place team, you'll see that even if a team has the same win record, what this formula does is it allows us to separate the teams so that while they do have the same win record, the team with the higher point differential or the higher points scored will eventually be the winner. And so we'll do it on the same row for Sacramento Kings, and then now we have to rank these teams and their points. So equals rank.eq, open bracket, the number will be AD5, comma, and the reference cells will be AD5 to AD7, absolute reference that, close the brackets, press enter, and drag this formula down to cell AE7, where once you fill without formatting, you'll be able to rank the teams based on their points in the AD column. So the Sacramento Kings have come first in this simulation, meaning that they're able to clinch the wildcard spot in the knockout rounds of the in-play tournament. Now we have to do the same thing for the Eastern Conference. So select all these cells and paste the formatting within cell AC9. In this header up here, we'll put East Wildcard, and then the headers, team, points, and rank going across from the right will remain the same. And obviously the teams will change from West ABC to East ABC, and the first one will be cell K45. The next one will be equals cell, it'll be down here, K58. And then second place in the East C group will be K71. And the points formula will be exactly the same too. The only thing that will change is the rows on which they're calculated. So if we go down to second place in East A, it's going to be equals L45 multiplied by 100,000 plus point differential in M45 plus N45 multiplied by 1 divided by 100,000. Now we'll do the same thing for the Knicks in East B, L58 times 100,000 plus M58 plus N58 times 1 divided by 100,000. Press enter, and now we only have cell AD13 to do, and that's going to be K, or L71 rather, multiplied by 100,000 plus M71 plus N71 times 1 divided by 100,000. Cool, and now we have to rank these teams by their points. So that's that rank.eq formula, open bracket, the number is AD11, and the reference cells are AD11 to AD13, absolute reference that. Drag that down, and here, once you fill that formatting, New York Knicks have managed to grab the wildcard spot, and now the Atlanta Hawks, and it will obviously change with every simulation you do. So now what we have to do is copy the formatting in cells AC9 to AE10, paste that in cell AC15, and then here we're going to go West standings. So the headers are still going to be the same, team, points, and rank, but here, instead of taking 3 teams up for that wildcard spot, we're going to be taking the 4 teams that have qualified for the knockout stage of the tournament. And that's going to be first place in each group. So for example, for the West, it's going to be first place in West A, West B, West C, and then that 4th team will be the West team that's grabbed that wild card, in this case, the Utah Jazz. So in the first cell, it's just going to be K5, the Memphis Grizzlies. Second cell equals K18, and then we just need the first place team from West C, and that's equal to K31. Now, the team that has grabbed the wild card, we need to grab first place in that West wild card table we made above. So we're going to use an XLOOKUP function, open bracket. We're looking up the number 1. We're looking that up in the array AE7 or AE5 to AE7, and then we're returning AC5 to AC7. So here the Golden State Warriors have grabbed the wildcard spot, so they're included in the West standings table here. Now to grab the points for each team so that we can rank them 1 through to 4, it's exactly the same process as what we did for the wildcard spots. It's just L5 multiplied by 100,000 plus M5, the point differential, plus points scored, multiplied by 1 divided by 100,000. And that just ranks each stat in terms of its importance. So obviously a team with a higher win record will be ranked above that of a team with a lower win record, and vice versa. So L18 times 100,000 plus M18 plus N18 times 1 divided by 100,000. And then for the third team, it's going to be L31 multiplied by 100,000 plus M31 plus N31 times 1 divided by 100,000. And for the 4th team, their points are irrelevant because their rank's always going to be 4th. They're the wildcard team. Just for the sake of it though, we'll look up Sacramento Kings within the West wildcard teams and then return their points in AD5 to AD7. And once you've entered that formula, you may see again that, for example, the Grizzlies actually have higher points than the Kings and the Suns, but it's totally irrelevant because their rank will always be 4th because they're the wildcard team. Now for the other 3 teams, we use that exact same rank.eq formula to make sure that the team with the most points is first and third has the least amount. AD17, and we're checking it in the range AD17 to AD19. Drag that down, filled out formatting, and you'll see here the Denver Nuggets are the first team after the group stage of the Western Conference games, and Oklahoma is 4th, so they'll be playing each other in the first round of the knockout stage. Now we have to do the same thing for the Eastern Conference, obviously, so we can paste this formatting into cell AC21, and then the header will be East standings, obviously still team points, then rank. And then the 4 teams will be the wildcard team last, and then in order will be East A winner, East B winner, and East B winners in cell K57, East C winner, that's in cell K70, and then the wildcard team. And to find that, we need to use an XLOOKUP function to match the first place team with the first place rank in AE11 to AE13 with the first place team in AC11 to AC13. And once you've done that, we need to find the points for each team in the same process as above. L44 multiplied by 100,000 plus M44 plus N44 multiplied by 1 divided by 100,000. Enter. Now we've done it for the team in East A. We need to do it for East B now. L57 multiplied by 100,000 plus M57 plus N57 multiplied by 1 divided by 100,000. Close the bracket, press enter. And lastly, for the team in East C who have won their group, in this case the Raptors, L70 multiplied by 100,000 plus M70 plus N70 multiplied by 1 divided by 100,000. Close the bracket, press enter. And again, the Milwaukee Bucks points is negligible because they'll always be ranked 4 in the East standings we've got here. But just for the sake of cleanliness, we'll look up AC27 within AC11, AC13 and return AD11, AD13. And make sure you write 4 in that cell AE27. Now for the remaining 3 teams, rank.eq, the number will be AD24, reference cells AD24 to AD26, so it'll order the points based on those cells. Fill without formatting, and then now we've got standings for each conference, which will determine the teams playing in the first round of matches in the knockout stage. Go across to the left, and we have one more thing to do on this worksheet. Because here the Memphis Grizzlies have clinched the wildcard spot in the playoffs, we want to go into conditional formatting and make a rule so that the entire row, or row 6, is highlighted in green, signifying that the Grizzlies have made this wildcard spot. So use the formula to determine which cells to format. I want a green fill, and then I need to come up with a formula, and that'll be an if formula equals if open bracket. Now scroll over to the right here where you're going to select cell AE5. So if cell AE5 equals 1, meaning if the Memphis Grizzlies have managed to come first or get the wildcard spot, then return true, comma, if not, return false. Close the bracket, press OK. And then if you scroll left again, you'll see the row has been highlighted, meaning that the Grizzlies have won the wildcard spot in the playoffs, and we can check that over here. Now we have to do the same process for every single second place row in West A, B, C, and then of course East A, B, C. So highlight cells rules, and you can really select any value there. I'll select more rules, but every single time we've got to use a formula to determine which cells to format. For West B, it's going to be if AE6 equals 1, return true, if not, return false. Copy and paste that so we can do it a bit quicker for the next one, and so we don't have to write out the formula. Of course, Los Angeles Clippers are not highlighted in green as they did not get the wildcard spot. And to check if Sacramento clinched the wildcard spot for the West C group, it's AE7 equals 1. So now we'll do the same thing for the Eastern Conference. Use the formula to determine if AE11 equals 1. So that's the Detroit Pistons in this instance, and as a result, they should not be highlighted yet. Now, if we try the Miami Heat in the East B group, once we do that formula, they should come up in green. So use another formula, copy and paste, AE12. That's the next row down with a green fill. Okay, and then they come up because in this simulation, it's the Heat who have got that wildcard spot. And now for the last one, we're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. Yet again, it's going to be if AE12, or 13 rather, because 12 was the Heat. It's the next row down, and that's the Magic. So we can scroll up again, run a couple simulations, and then these values should change depending on who actually gets that wildcard spot. In this instance, it's the Pelicans, and for the Eastern Conference, Atlanta. So we can go over and check on our wildcard tables to verify that our conditional formatting is true. It's not really too critical for the accuracy of the model, this conditional formatting. It's just a nice aesthetic touch. Now that we've got the 4 teams from every conference who have made the knockout stage of the tournament, go back into the NBA tournament fixtures worksheet where you're going to select rows 132 to 148 and then paste the formatting within cell A156. And here what we're going to do is simulate the finals of the tournament. So in this header, write NBA tournament finals. Next, you're going to come over to cell B158, where we have to paste all the headers from match across to overtime number 4. So paste that. Now, don't worry about column A. So cells A135 to 154 are irrelevant because we already know the teams who are going to be in the knockout stage. Paste the matches from 1 to 7. And then what we're going to do next is make sure there's a bottom border in row 172. Just fix the formatting. And then the first step in the NBA tournament final simulation is pulling the relevant teams so that they play each other. So in match 1, it's going to be team 1 from the Western Conference versus rank number 4 from the Western Conference. So to find the first team, we're using the XLOOKUP function to look up value 1 within the lookup array. So if we scroll across to the right in this worksheet, the lookup array is going to be AE17 to AE20, absolute reference that, comma, and then we want to return the list of teams there. So AC17 to AC20, of course, absolute reference this, close the bracket, press enter. And then once you do that, number 1 seed in the Western Conference is the Denver Nuggets. Now, drag this down, and then what we'll do is first we'll play 4th. So change that to 4 in cell C160. And then in match 2, seed number 2 will play seed number 3. So change it to a 2 in cell C161. And then, of course, change the lookup value to a 3 in cell C162. That way we have seeds 1st versus 4th and 2nd versus 3rd in the Western Conference. Let's do the exact same thing for the Eastern Conference now for matches 3 and 4. XLOOKUP, we're looking up first place within the range AE24 to AE27 of the NBA Simulated Results Worksheet, and then it's AC24 to AC27 for the return array. So drag that down, and then same thing as the Western Conference, 1st versus 4th, 2nd versus 3rd. Cool. Now we have to work out their expected points and simulate the actual matches themselves between the Grizzlies, the Timberwolves, the Kings, Clippers, Raptors, Cavaliers, and Pacers, Bucks. So scroll up, and we've already got all these formulas worked out in part 1. So select cells D135 all the way across to R100, or Q rather, Q142. So select those cells, copy them, and because they're formulas, we can just paste them in cell D159 and the relevant stats will update. So here, if we look at D159, we're looking up Oklahoma's attack rating, multiplying it by their opposition to get their expected points. And then obviously every time we simulate, the expected points in the simulations will change based on the teams that are playing. Now match 5 will be the winner of match 1 versus the winner of match 2. So our lookup value is max of L159 to L160. We're looking for the team with the highest points there, comma, we're looking that up in the same array, L159 to L160, and then we're matching that with a team in the C159 to C160 range. So if we look here, the Timberwolves have beaten the Clippers in double overtime, so they move on to match 5. Now, they'll be versing, obviously, the winner of game 2, so we can use the same formula, just with different ranges. So we're looking up the maximum value, or the winner of the matchup 2, and that cells 161 to 162 in the M column. The lookup array is the same thing, and then we're returning a team in the C column. Close the bracket, and we can check again. The Pelicans have beaten the Lakers, 109 to 103 in this matchup, so they progress to verse the Warriors in the semi-final. Now for matchup 6, it's going to be the winner of team or match 3 versus the winner of match 4. We're looking up the maximum of L163 to L164 and then returning the relevant team. Same thing for the XLOOKUP, but doing it for matchup 4 this time. The maximum of cells M165 to M166, looking them up in 165 to 166 and returning C165 to C166. Once you've done that, we can try a couple simulations, make sure everything's updating. Then select cells D156 to Q162 and copy and paste that in a cell D167, and that's just putting in the formulas for matchup 5 and 6. Now all we have left is matchup 7, which is the final. So we want the winner of match 5 using the same formula as above. We're looking up the maximum number of cells L167 to 168. In that same range, we're matching that array to the return array, which is the Suns and the Rockets in C167 to C168. Here the Jazz have made the final, and they'll verse winner of match 6, looking up the maximum of M169 or L169 to L170 rather. The lookup array is the same, and then the return array is both the teams in match 6. Close the bracket, enter, and we get our teams. Select cells D169 to Q170, paste that, and then now we have our expected points for the final as well as the final points value. And in this simulation, actually the Knicks have won by 1 point over the Jazz. We can run simulations of these by, of course, pressing backspace. And then as of now, we've done every single simulation relevant to the model. The only thing left is to display every single match in the knockout stage in bracket form. So that's what we're going to do next. Create a new worksheet called NBA Knockout. And then what we're going to do here is create a bracket. So teams moving from the quarterfinals to the semifinals to the finals are represented nicely. And so we're able to see every team progress through the rounds, of course, after they've qualified out of the group stage. So merge and center cells B1 to C1 after you've adjusted the row width, and then type in quarterfinal here. Then once you've done that, copy and paste this into cells E1, H1, K1, and N1, leaving a column of space each time. Adjust the width so everything fits nicely. And then, of course, in E1, you're going to adjust that to the semi-final. Then in H1, the final, and in K1, the semi-final. So you have two sides of the bracket, the left-hand side and the right-hand side, representing the Eastern and Western Conference. So in cells B3 to C4, you're going to make a box that looks exactly like this. This is going to separate Team 1 from Team 2. Paste that into cells B7, E5, H5, K5, N3, and N7. And so we have 7 matches representing our 7 matches in the NBA tournament fixtures simulations. So now we're going to select the left-hand side of every single box so we can adjust the formatting. And you can do that if you're on Mac by holding down the command button. And what this left-hand side will do is be the list of teams in that match. And then so now we can do the same thing for the right-hand side of every box. And this right-hand side will be the score of the match. So imagine in the first box from B3 to B4 are the 2 teams playing in that match. And then in C3 to C4 will be the scores simulated in that match from the NBA tournament fixtures worksheet. And that's literally what we're going to do for this first formula in cell B3. It's going to be equals, then go into the NBA tournament fixtures worksheet, C159 to C160. And then once you press that, the 2 teams in match 1 will come up, the Grizzlies and the Nuggets in this case. Drag the width out so there's enough room for the teams. And then now we have to match those 2 teams to their respective scores. So equals, same formula, but this time it's L159 to L160. So instead of the teams, it's going to be the points. And then here the Grizzlies have won the match, meaning they'll progress to that cell E5 in the next semi-final round. So match 2, it's going to be 161 to 162 in the C column. Then we need to match that to a score in the L column. So same range except in a different column. Now we have to do the right-hand side of the bracket representing the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. So in cell N3, the formula is going to be NBA tournament fixtures C163 to C164. Let's do the same thing for match 4 of the playoffs, 165 to 166 in the C column. Now to match it with the points, it's match 3 points, L163 to 164. And then for match 4, it's going to be L165 to L166. Now we have to do the semi-finals. So the first semi-final on the left-hand side of the bracket will be match 5. So the formula is equals teams in match 5, 167, 168. And then we've got to match that to the simulated scores for match 5, which will be in the L column in the same rows. So L167 to L168. Do the same thing for the Eastern Conference. Now this process is really repetitive, so if there's any issues, you can just check back to the NBA tournament fixtures worksheet and see if everything aligns. Match the Celtics and Cavaliers to their points scored in this simulation, L169 to L170. And then now the final is obviously match 7, so we've got to get the teams there by going equals, and that's going to be C171 to C172. And then the same rows, but this time the L column is going to be used so that the final points are recorded. And then in this sim, the Pelicans have won over the Bucks. Let's represent that by merging and centering cells H3 to I3, creating an outside border, fixing the formatting. And in here, we're just going to have the team that has won. So to do that, we're going to use a max formula with the X lookup like we did to figure out who progresses from one round to the next. Equals X lookup. Our lookup value is the maximum number of I5 to I6. Looking up that same array and returning the array in H5. Now there's a hash symbol that comes up because I'm using an array here, but the formula works perfectly. As you can see, you can try the simulations and make sure or confirm for yourself that the team with the highest amount of points moves from one round to the next. And then the next step is to highlight a team in green if they've progressed through to the next round. So select cells B3 to B4, conditional formatting, highlight cells rules equal to, only format cells in green fill if they're equal to cell E5. So Oklahoma have moved through to the next round, therefore highlight them. And then so if I do another simulation, Golden State are highlighted because they've progressed through to the semifinal from the quarterfinals. So same thing, go to equal to in conditional formatting. Always highlight with a green fill, and this time it'll be equal to E6 so that the Rockets are highlighted. Now I'll do it very quickly for the remaining 7 matches using the same exact process. You can slow this video down if you want to, except for the final, I want to highlight the winning team in gold or yellow. So I'll format with a customized format. Then a pop-up window should appear, go into fill, background color, and then now you can select your own color. So I'll press OK here, and I want it equal to, if I do another simulation, equal to the winner in the Cleveland Cavaliers. So that's in cell H4, and then now the Cavaliers have been highlighted. And that's the NBA Knockout worksheet done. You can run a few simulations to test it out, but the only thing left to do with this model is to analyze each team's probability of winning the tournament itself. So to do that, create a new worksheet and title it Analysis. The first thing I'll do in this worksheet is to adjust the width of the rows so it's more presentable. To do that, click on the top left-hand box over here, and then by adjusting one row, it'll do the rest. And what I'm going to do in this worksheet is basically list all the teams, and then using the simulations in the NBA Knockout worksheet, come up with the probability of them winning the tournament. So merge and center cells C3 to H3 and type in the text NBA in-season tournament win percentage. Select cells C4 to H15, add all borders in it, and then in cell C4, I'll type in the text West A. And then under this West A header, I'm going to list the 5 teams in the West A group. Next to it in D4, type in the text probability, and then copy and paste this probability text into F4, H4, then D10, F10, and H10. So West A in C4, West B in E4, G4 is West C, and then the Eastern Conference in row 10, East A, East B, and East C. So highlight these headers in grey, and so you can probably see what I'm doing with this. I'm listing the West A teams and then their corresponding probability, doing the same thing for West B, West C, East A, B, and C. Now to list the West A teams, it's pretty easy. In cell C5, it's equals, go into NBA tournament fixtures, scroll up all the way to the top, and then this groups table we made, it's going to be the B6 to B10 range. So adjust the width of the columns to make sure every team fits in. And then now I'm going to do the same thing for West B, West C, East A, B, and C. So again, this is a repetitive part of the model, C6 to C10. And if you do make a mistake here, you can always type out the teams, so there's nothing to worry about. All you need are the 5 teams in each group. So for the Eastern Conference, it's E6 to E10, East B, F6 to F10, and then of course East C will be G6 to G10. Now after I adjust the width of the columns to make the table consistent, we're going to find the probability of each team winning the tournament based off of the simulations done in the NBA Knockout worksheet. And that's going to be in columns D, F, and H. To do this, make a new worksheet and title it Simulations. Now, in this worksheet, go straight to cell B2, where here we're going to list the 30 teams horizontally across to the right, using the equals transpose function, open bracket, and our array is the list of teams we named in part 1. So close the bracket and we get Sacramento, and then across to the right all the way to the Miami Heat. Now in cell A3, write the text trials, and below this will be the number of trials we're performing. So I'll use the sequence function to spill 5,000 numbers ranging from 1 to 5,000, meaning I'm going to perform 5,000 simulations of the NBA in-tournament competition. And then the next step in B3 is to return how many times Sacramento appears in the NBA Knockout worksheet. If they appear once, then that means they made the quarterfinals, but then they've been knocked out, all the way up to 4, and that's if they've appeared 4 times, quarterfinals, semifinals, final, and then the winner of that final. So we want to select the range B3 to 08 as our range in the COUNTIF function, and then the criteria is obviously going to be the team. So that's going to be Sacramento in cell B2. Make sure though you absolute reference only the row in 2, so $ in front of the 2, not the column, because we want to be able to drag this to the right and keep the criteria consistent. So we get a result of 3. If we go into our NBA Knockout worksheet, we see Sacramento appears 3 times, which means they made the final, but they were unable to win it. With our simulations, we're effectively seeing how many times a team returns 4. So 4 with the COUNTIF function means that they've won the tournament. And so now I'm dragging this across to the right, all the way in column AE for the Miami Heat. And Philadelphia has the number 4 here, which means they've finished first in the knockout stages. So now it's time to simulate all these numbers 5,000 times. So select cells A3 all the way to AE 5003. Go to the Data tab, What If Analysis Data Table. Skip the row input cell. For the column input cell, just select a cell outside of the data set, such as AL3. Press OK. And then depending on the speed of your computer, the simulations may take anywhere from a few seconds up to even a minute to load. Obviously, the more simulations you perform, the slower the simulations will take. If you scroll to the left, you can confirm that simulations 1 through to 5,000 have been performed. And then now what we have to do is go back into the analysis worksheet and collate all these simulations to find the probability of the Grizzlies, Suns, all the way through to the Magic finishing first in this tournament. To do this, we need to use a COUNTIF function, open bracket. Our range, we'll need to use an index function for that, open bracket. The array for the range is going to be back into the simulations worksheet. We need to scroll up all the way to the top of the worksheet, and it's just going to be every single simulation performed from B4 all the way to AE 5003. So you drag it across and you've got to make sure every single simulation is included from the first row to the 5,000th row. Make sure you absolute reference this range, putting a $ in front of both the column and the row, comma, the row number is 0, comma, the column number, well, we need a match function for that, open bracket, the lookup value will be C5, the team, and we want to match that to a lookup array in simulations. That's going to be our horizontal list of teams from B2 to AE2. That's an array, so it's come up with a hash, but the range itself is B2 to A2. Absolute reference this. And then what you're going to do is comma 0, because we want an exact match. Close the bracket twice, comma. The criteria for our countif function is going to be 4, because we want to count how many times the team returns 4, meaning their name has appeared 4 times in the NBA knockout sheet, meaning they've won the tournament, and then divide by 5,000, which is the number of trials, so we get a percentage. So the Memphis Grizzlies here have got 0.0564, meaning they've got 5.64% chance of finishing first, according to this batch of 5,000 simulations. I'll put this to 2 decimal points, and then drag that down, or the formula down, to D9, so we get the probability for the Grizzlies through to the Blazers. And you can see the probabilities change. This is because Excel's performing another 5,000 simulations, which will of course be different to the previous 5,000 simulations. Obviously, the more simulations you do, the less these numbers will change with each simulation. Copy and paste D5 to D9 into F5 to F9, and do the same thing in column H for the West C group. And then, yeah, you just do it for East A, East B, East C. It's just copy and paste because we've used the correct absolute referencing. For example, East B, it'll find the correct probabilities for the Bucks, Knicks, Heat, Wizards, and Hornets, and that index match function within the countif function will return the correct team. So now we've got every team's win probability according to 5,000 simulations. The only thing left is to go into conditional formatting, select color scales, and then the first option will highlight the most likely events in green and the least likely events in red. And we can see the favorites are the Celtics, the Grizzlies, the Cavaliers, the Nuggets, and the Kings. And lads, that's the model done. I hope you enjoyed it. If you wanted access to this file, make sure you click the first link in the description below to go to the Excel Lads Patreon page.